Doctors, priests, uninjured survivors do their best. But 79 men, women and children are dead or dying in the worst disaster in motor racing history.
Welcome back to another video. This week's video is going to be looking at some of the craziest car crashes of all time. If you're interested in hearing about some of them, stick around. Before we get into the main portion of the video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to catch future videos like this. This video is going to be based on both motorsports accidents and day-to-day road accidents. We will note before we start that we mean no disrespect to the families of those lost in some of these accidents. This video is purely created to address the damage cars can cause. Now, let's get into it. Here are the craziest car accidents to ever happen. First off, let's start with some of the craziest motorsports accidents in history. First up is the Portugal Rally of 1986. Back in the 1980s, safety wasn't the biggest priority when it came to motorsports. It was all about the popularity of an event. This meant that when fans wanted to stand incredibly close to the tarmac, and some even on the tarmac, it wasn't a problem, until it led to one of the deadliest crashes in motorsports history. During the Portugal Rally of '86, drivers in the race feared the lack of supervision held over the crowd and tried to ensure more precautions were put into place. Event organizers refused though, because the rallying was not a key priority. The lack of safety precautions ended up leading to a tragic accident when Joaquim Santos was driving his Ford RS200 in the race. Upon approaching a crest, he lost traction and spiraled out of control. His car instantly crashed straight into the crowd, and it resulted in the death of 3 spectators along with serious injuries to others. Next up is Jerry Caminito's crash in 1994. While racing in 1994, Caminito's spill plate snapped off the car. This led to him careening the vehicle straight through the left barrier before the drag race even began. The barrier was completely destroyed, as was the car, which tore up in a matter of seconds as it flipped across the barrier. Emergency crews were able to quickly airlift him to a hospital. Thankfully, he survived and recovered with time. Now, onto one of the most intense crashes in motorsport history, the 1955 24-hour Le Mans crash. This horrifying motorsports incident led to the tragic loss of 82 lives and injured over 100 people. It was all caused by a single car. The incident took place at Cirque des Sarthes in Le Mans, France, where Pierre Boulin, who raced under Pierre Levet, unintentionally caused one of the most significant motorsports crashes in history. During the race, Levet was driving a Mercedes-Benz model when he attempted to overtake an Aston Healey that was driving at a much slower speed. He attempted to do so less than 2 hours into the race and got confused with the track positioning. Levet ended up hitting the back of Healey, which caused his car to go flying through the air. The Mercedes-Benz then ended up crashing into the crowd, instantly killing him and 81 people in the audience. The tragic event caused the racing team to withdraw from any motorsports competition for 30 years after the incident. Up next is the crash of Mille Miglia in 1957. Alfonso von Portago was racing the Mille Miglia with his co-driver Edmund Nelson when they were involved in a deadly crash. As they passed a small village, Portago lost control of the car and it ended up plowing straight into a ditch. As the vehicle launched into the air upon the impact, it landed directly on top of a group of spectators and ended up killing both drivers and the 9 bystanders on impact. As the 1955 Le Mans crash was just 2 years before this incident, it gave Ferrari and the motorsports industry as a whole a lousy reputation. The entire concept of viewing a race was dubbed as unsafe. Last of all is the incident of the San Marino Grand Prix in 1994. The 1994 event saw the deaths of 2 respected Formula One drivers in 2 separate incidents. Initially, it saw the death of Roland Ratzenberger, who lost his life during the qualifying round, a day before the actual event. During the race, one of Ratzenberger's wings was damaged and it eventually came off and got stuck beneath the car. This caused him to propel off the track and into the barrier at an incredibly high speed. It resulted in several injuries, including severe damage to the head, and he was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. Despite Ratzenberger's death, the event still took place the following day. This led to the death of Ayrton Senna, one of the most respected Formula One drivers in the sport's history. The race was spectacular in many ways. A collision collision at the start led to debris flying all over the track. As the safety car went around the track as the debris was removed, there was a fault with its brakes, meaning it had to travel at an incredibly reduced speed. This meant the rest of the cars were at an incredibly reduced speed and had to pick it up quickly once the race resumed. His crash ended up being caused by a steering column failure caused by a pre-race adjustment. This led to him driving straight off the track and plowing into the barrier. The shallow angle it hit the wall at caused one of his tires to shoot upon impact into his helmet. This smacked his skull back into the headrest, causing serious fractures. A piece of suspension also hit the helmet, and a piece of jagged assembly penetrated his visor. It's unclear which of these injuries caused his death, but whichever it was, left him alive for a total of 10 seconds after the crash before he ceased movement. The events of the San Marino 1994 Grand Prix are one of the most tragic events in motorsports history. Up next, we're going to be looking at some of the most intense crashes outside of motorsport, caused and experienced by everyday drivers. First on the list is a crash that took place in Sao Paulo in Brazil. This incident took place on the 15th of September 2011. It is known to be the largest multi-car pileup in history and was the incident of some extremely dense fog. The crash consisted of over 300 vehicles plowing into each other and stretched out for over an entire mile. It leads to many vehicles catching fire. Luckily, the incident sounds a lot worse than it was. Just 20 injuries were reported out of the incident, and amazingly, there wasn't a single death. In 2002, we saw a similar incident. On November 3, 2002, a similar incident took place on Interstate 710 in Los Angeles, California. This was the largest multi-car pileup in the entirety of the United States and consisted of 216 vehicles plowing into each other. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured or lost their lives during this incident either. Just 41 had treatable injuries. Unfortunately, the US did see a severe tragedy related to a road collision just a few years before this. Independence Day of 1998 saw an incredibly devastating crash on what should have been a day of unity and enjoyment. July 4th saw Kevin Chittum, alongside his fiancée, his 13-year-old sister, 11-year-old niece, and 2 of her friends get into one of the most horrific accidents imaginable. The group were on their way to a local fair and would have had the couple's toddler daughter in the car if there was any extra space. A storm all of a sudden approached as the family was on its way to the fair, and the car ended up hitting a bump, causing it to hydroplane across the median. This resulted in them crashing into a tractor-trailer, which left every person involved in the crash dead. Independence Day wasn't the only American holiday that saw tragedy. November 29th of 1991, Thanksgiving weekend, saw huge gusts of wind that were blowing up to 40 miles per hour. This obviously created some extremely dangerous driving conditions anyway, but a drought worsened them. A drought had caused the farmland along I-5 in California to be extremely dry, and therefore incapable of having things planted there. This caused a huge dust storm to pick up that severely limited the visibility of those driving on the road. This therefore resulted in a 104 vehicle pileup that consisted of cars and tractor trailers. The incident stretched out over a mile long and resulted in 17 deaths as well as 150 severe injuries. On top of this, thousands of people were stuck in their cars for an entire day as emergency services struggled to clear the wreckage. In contrast to this 104-car pileup was a crash involving just one car. On August 21, 2010, saw one of the craziest car accidents ever because of the sheer speed it was traveling at. A single driver in a 1998 Dodge Viper was traveling at an incredible 170 miles per hour along the highway outside Markham when they inevitably lost control of the vehicle. This resulted in the car flipping many times before it crashed into a pole. It left the driver with extremely deadly injuries and is a fair warning on the horrific risks of speeding. Another one-person incident saw someone serve jail time for 18 months. On February 21, 2006, an incident saw Stefan Eriksson, the head of Gizmondo, a handheld gaming device, crash his Enzo. Eriksson was traveling 162 miles per hour down the Pacific Coast Highway when he crashed, causing his car to split in two against a lamppost. Amazingly, he walked away from the crash unscathed, which led to many people accusing him of lying and covering his story. It sparked an international investigation that led to him going to jail for 18 months. Last of all is an incident caused by an ice storm in Maryland. An ice storm on January 19, 2009 saw 20 car accidents in Washington County. The worst of these was a multi-car pileup that included 7 tractor trailers and 35 cars smashing into each other. This incident resulted in the loss of 2 lives and 35 injuries, 12 of which were severe. That's everything we have time for today, guys. Let us know if you want to see more videos like this and whether you enjoyed this video by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to our channel. Make sure you turn on notifications too. We'll catch you soon for another video.